Okay, good morning everybody. Again, my name is Cherian. I'm from NTU, and it's my pleasure to welcome all of you on behalf of the organizers, AMIC, IPS, as well as the online citizen. The basic premise and objective of this workshop today is to help those bloggers who want to transition into something else to move along that path. What exactly is that transition that we are talking about? Well, you know, it is a perfectly legitimate and acceptable form of blogging, to blog for yourself and those who are close to you, right? It's perfectly acceptable to blog as a form of self-expression, to let off steam and so on, right? But some of you and some of us want to do something else as well. We want to not just reach out to those who are like us or just get a let off steam, but also reach out to maybe even people who are different from us, or especially people who are different from us. Because that in the end is the only way we can influence others. That's the only way we can contribute to something larger, a public debate. Even if that public is not that large, or even if it just means influencing, say, people in your school or in your university, people in a wider community that may be politically, ideologically, culturally different from you. Right? When you make that transition from blogging for yourself and your own community to blogging for different people who may not share your views, we think that a certain mindset shift is necessary. Right? Certain new skills are required. And so the purpose of today really is to arm you with those skills. Yeah? So we've put together a series of sessions that will sort of, we hope, in a simple and systematic way, arm you with what's required to make that transition. And we're going to start this morning with a general discussion with two practitioners who, to me at least, exemplify that particular transition, right? Exemplify that ability to reach out and make an impact that I think is far greater than their limited means. Yeah? Neither Zheng Si from the Online Citizen or Alex Au from Yawning Bread are full-time professional journalists, right? Neither of them earn anything, or not much anyway, from their activity. They both have to find other ways to earn a living, and yet they have managed, I think, to make an impact in public debate in Singapore. And we're going to spend the next hour or so trying to find out what their particular formulas are. Right? In my earlier discussions with them, I think they were both very insistent that, look, they're not in a position to write a textbook on this. What they have to offer is just a purely personal experience. Whether or not you find their formula relevant to you, that's up to you to decide. And certainly that's the whole tone of what we are attempting to do today. Right? It's not to write your textbook. Is to offer you some interesting examples that you can, if you want, learn from. Yeah? So let me start the ball rolling. And we're not going to be making speeches here. We're going to attempt a more talk show format. Think of me as Oprah Winfrey. So I'm going to ask both of you to answer this question. In your development as bloggers, when it first dawned on you that you might make an impact or influence greater than you expected, what are the kinds of mental adjustments that you found yourselves making? Alex, you want to start?
I don't think I ever had to think very hard about that, because it wasn't as if the blog started off personal and then became activist. I was an activist before I became digital. So for me, it's just a natural progression of one kind of activism on one platform, which is just speaking in a room, to speaking through cyberspace. But yes, there was a time when or rather a few moments when you kind of realized, oh, this is a bit bigger than I expected. And every time that happens, you check yourself again. You first begin by speaking to the converted, people who are really close to you, your friends, people who know what you're about. And then at some point you realize you're speaking to people who are not so familiar with the topic. And then you find yourself that, okay, I have to give more context, more background every time I try to make a point, because I can't assume that everybody's there with me on the same page. And then, of course, at other times you say to yourself, well, there are people who don't agree with me reading my blog. And when that happens, you have to be careful that you don't leave yourself open to unnecessary criticism because you made an unsubstantiated statement and so forth. So there have been various stages, and each time you just kind of get a little bit more careful and a little bit more considerate towards your reader.
I began much the same way Alex did. I was always an activist before I was a blogger. I think the turning point in the way I perceive the power of the internet was the deregulation debate on the Films Act and on other internet regulation. And what struck me then was a notion that to strengthen the argument for deregulating free speech online, certain first principles had to be looked at again. So for me, that was responsibility, which means putting your name to what you believe in, firstly, and secondly, a more practical consideration in asking for deregulation. A convincing reason needs to be given that free speech will be exercised responsibly online. So as the influence of the internet grows, I think with great power comes great responsibility. The turning point hasn't come where more draconian or stricter regulations on free speech are being looked at on the internet. In fact, the direction seems to be the opposite, a light touch. But I think bloggers need to remember that this light touch isn't written into substantive law, and that is a bureaucratic decision that can be reversed at any point in time. A good example would be South Korea's internet real name verification laws. South Korea being very free, very open, very democratic. I think after Roh Moo-hyun's election in early 2000, and the political influence of the internet was translated in, the influence of the internet was translated into votes, we saw a shift away from a free-for-all, even in South Korea. And that's something that could very easily happen in Singapore. The government deciding that, well, enough is enough. Tighter regulations, real name verification, which could have a more chilling effect on free speech online, could be in order. So I think this mirrors the debate in mainstream media in the 1940s, that the best safeguard of democratic rights is the responsible exercise of free speech.